Hey, what's up? John Sonmez from simpleprogrammer.com. So I'm doing another book review today. If you want to check out all the book reviews I've done quite a few of them so far. You can check out this playlist of all my book reviews. I'd encourage you to go and check that out, and definitely click the subscribe button if you haven't already, so that you can be subscribed and you can get these book reviews as I do them. My style for doing book review, for those of you that are new to the channel, is to tell you what I liked about the book, not to summarize the book, at least for the most part, because I like to give my opinion on the book, so you can decide if you want to read it or not, and maybe some of the things I've learned from it. So in this book review today, I'm going to be talking about a book that's not very well known, but I sort of came across from Tony Robbins, from the Unleash the Power Within seminar. You can check out the video I did on that seminar, and doing distance running myself, getting involved. I'm running like 40, 45, 50 miles a week now, pretty much on a consistent basis. Not pretty much, but on it every week. So I encountered this guy that Tony had talked about called Stu Mittleman, and he basically set the record. He ran 1,000 miles in 11 days, which is kind of crazy. So I said, well, he runs on fat, right? He talks about running on fat, which is something I'm pretty interested in. You can check out all my fitness videos if you're curious about that. And I eat one meal a day. I ran a full marathon, completely fasted, hadn't eaten for 24 hours, and ran the 26.2 miles. So I'm very interested in this topic and improving my ability to run on fat. So I bought this book called Slowburn by Stu. You can check it out here. Now, I have mixed thoughts about this book. I think there's some interesting concepts in the book. There's, the book is very much on the kind of woo-woo side of things, where Steve has some interesting theories, an interesting model for running. Now, here's the thing. I'm a bit conflicted, because this guy is a phenomenal runner. He's way better than I am. He's a phenomenal athlete. Amazing ability. And so this book kind of brought up this whole thing. Like he's got some weird stuff in there. Now, a lot of the stuff I agree with, like his model for running. He's got sort of this paradigm where how you put your arms and how you run as if the world's turning underneath you, and this kind of the calmness and being in the moment and all this stuff. I totally agree with all that. Eckhart Tolle stuff, he's totally right on with that. I totally agree with that. It's not very practical as far as like in a running book and giving you the advice on how to run that I was looking for necessarily, but it makes sense to me. That's fine. But he does go into this kind of weird stuff with this muscle testing, where he basically kind of says in the book that you could figure out if a supplement's good for your body, if your body's going to like the supplement, by doing muscle testing while you're holding it, and doing this a lot. And so the reason why I'm conflicted a little bit about this is because you have this person that's achieved so much. He's got results to prove it. I mean, he's probably, arguably one of the best, if not the best, endurance athlete in the world. And he believes this kind of really weird thing. And so I'm kind of at this point where I'm like, well, what more credibility of results could you ask for than what he's got? If I am going to say that what he's talking about is bullshit, then there's nothing. What could a person do that could convince me? And that's not a place that I like to be, right? So there should be no belief that I hold that I cannot be convinced of or unconvinced of, right, if given enough evidence and credibility and stuff. And so evidence-wise, he doesn't have, but credibility-wise, he does. And so I'm a bit conflicted. Again, I'm not 100% sure where I sit on this whole concept in general. Now, on what he said about the muscle testing, I'm in pretty big disbelief. I'm just not buying into that. Maybe I'll test it out. Maybe I'll give it more of the benefit of the doubt. So I may be in the wrong here. I haven't figured out exactly where I sit on that, but I thought I'd bring up that interesting point. So the book itself, again, a lot of it, a huge section of the book is some of this kind of weird muscle testing stuff, and then some of the psychology of running, this, what I'd call Eckhart Tolle kind of Zen type of running. and an idea behind it, and being in the now and in the present, which I think is valuable. And then he gets into the technical side of it, and he talks about heart rate based running, but he doesn't really give a very, very good detailed program. I was really looking for some in-depth information about how to run on fat, and he's very pragmatic, he's very practical, but it's just not, there's not enough detailed stuff. So he talks about heart rate zone training, which I think makes a lot of sense, staying in the fat burning zone, but I'm not seeing like a true progression. Like he's got some programs and stories in there that are interesting, but it's not quite as technical as what I was hoping for as I'm doing this research and I'm testing on myself. And then he goes into diet, and he's got a lot of information on diet. He believes in basically blood type dieting, which I'm not entirely sure I agree with, but his diet recommendations in general, again, he's also a supporter of the alkalinizing your body versus acid. I haven't seen much evidence again on that. That one I'm a little bit, I don't think it makes sense. I think what he says that you should eat makes sense, right? So his diet recommendations and the things that he says in the book, it makes a lot of sense what he says, which is kind of a high-fat diet in the specific foods that he recommends. These tend to be the foods that I've noticed that improvement in performance, in ability and muscle size, and being able to keep the body fat down based on eating these foods. So I think there's some benefit to that. Again, I think the model might be wrong. I don't know about the alkaline versus acidic, but I think these foods that are labeled in those categories tend to work out. It tends to work out even though the theoretical might be wrong. And I'm not sure about the blood type thing either. I'll have to research that a bit more. So overall, what I would say about this book, I think this is probably a book that I would say on the skip side, right? Because it's not, I don't know, if you're interested in hearing his stories and stuff, I think there's some benefit to that, but from a practical, pragmatic standpoint, there's not a huge amount of like actionable advice that you could take and you could really run with, so to speak. There's some key things, I think, about the physiology and about exercise and kind of his viewpoint, and it's got to make sense, because this guy's obviously doing something right. I mean, he's world record holder he's done some crazy stuff, 7-day events where he's run 647 miles and set records and stuff like that. So he obviously knows what he's talking about. So I'm again very much in this kind of weird place with this book and what he says, because it's really hard to deny the evidence that he's got of him actually having the results. But at the same time, a lot of this stuff that he tends to attribute the results to, I'm not sure. Even some of the things that he says about shoes and stuff like that, I'm not sure. Maybe there's another element. So that's one of the problems of life, is trying to figure out, to sort it out. So, my solution for this kind of thing is to say, well, test on yourself. Try these things out. See if it works. See if the muscle testing works, right? Try these things out, especially if it comes from a source that has results, then you should be willing to try out some of these things. So that's about where I sit on the book. It's not the book I was hoping for that really talks about the physiology and how to train your body to burn fat and how to measure that. I'm very curious to figure out some of those things. So as I'm working on things like doing fasted marathons and trying to stay in ketosis while running and lifting weights, and how to balance that out and to take in the right amount of carbs to still stay in ketosis when I'm doing my endurance training and stuff like that. So it's not quite that book, but I think there's some benefit in reading the book and reading his stories, just not as much as I was hoping for. Anyway, that's my review on the book. If you liked that, go check it out. You can check it out at over here. It's called Slowburn. And if you like this video, click that subscribe button below. I'll talk to you next time. Take care.